Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at jonnydelsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website jfa49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49.
Well, good morning, everybody. We are without the eponymous Adam Marino this morning. So as usual, give me a little mic check. Make sure that I'm working right. Sometimes there are technical difficulties, and we never want technical difficulties on the show. But thank you for joining us for this Friday morning, being patient with me. No, we didn't have a show Monday. My mother-in-law was in town, and if you know why we didn't have a show on Monday morning. But we are here today, excited to catch up on the week. I mean, did anything happen this week? I don't know if anything happened around the NFL this week. Of course, I was out bowling with my mother-in-law and the family, and went to check my phone and had about 15 text messages from different people wanting to talk about a trade that happened. I already saw some people in the chat saying we should not talk about this. Well, we have to talk about this. I haven't been able to get on here and share some thoughts about the Rams acquiring one Myles Garrett, maybe one of the greatest defensive end of our generation, is now with a division rival in the Rams. I will say, when I first saw the news that they'd gotten him, I was much more sick to my stomach than after I saw what they gave up. Not that they didn't get better. They absolutely got better as a team, but it wasn't a situation. I was imagining at first Myles Garrett and Jared Verse playing together, and that just is something that sounds horrible. So it wasn't a situation where they got both those guys. They had to give up Jared Verse, and they had to give up a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. So when I look at it, I go, okay, they got better, but how much better did they get? And where does this stand for them going forward? They sacrificed a very young Pro Bowl edge player who was 10th in the league in pressures last year for Myles Garrett, who was first in the league in pressures last year, had the greatest season of any defensive end ever. The question becomes, is Myles Garrett going to have another record-breaking season? Is he going to have another season where he is Defensive Player of the Year? The history says that he has done this several times, but I don't see this as necessarily a 16 sacks a year kind of improvement for them. Jared Verse was trending upwards, and it'll be hard to see Myles Garrett recreate what he did last year, mainly because we also have to remember there were two games in particular that really made Myles Garrett run away with everything last year. When you look at his per game and his game logs, it really came down to two games changed the entire season. It was a game against New England, and we saw what Seattle did to New England in the Super Bowl. That that New England could not, their tackles couldn't block anybody, even with Seattle. And so when they went against a Myles Garrett, he had 5 sacks against New England. And then they went and played Baltimore, and this was without Lamar Jackson, and he had 4 sacks. And then he went and played the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the worst offensive line in the NFL last year, and he had 3 sacks. So when you add up those 3 games, he had 12 sacks, which is a really good season. He had 12 sacks in 3 games. In 14 other games, he had 11 sacks. So the numbers do skew quite a bit for Myles. It's not saying that Myles is not a generational player. It's not saying that he's not an unbelievable player. I think, though, the knee jerk is that they just got a guy who's going to get 2-3 sacks a game on the 49ers, or, and I just don't see that as the case. When we played him, he had 1 sack. And so, like, the pressures they're going to generate a few more, but honestly, for me, I look at it and I go, I don't really care how many sacks Myles Garrett's going to get against the Cardinals. I don't. I only care how many is he going to get against the 49ers, because it doesn't matter if he has a 23 sack season and he has 1 sack and 3 pressures against us, because that's not going to change the math of the game all that much. You're talking about maybe one more pressure a game against us, and it may change the landscape of, do they have home field advantage through the playoffs or not. But when you're playing us, it doesn't matter if it's in Levi's or if it's in SoFi. That is a 49ers home game. So this doesn't, like, it can be a scary prospect of that team getting that guy. But then I also say, but nuts and bolts, what is this? How does this change the 49ers' outlook for this year? And the only thing that it really matters to me is, how many more pressures per game are you looking at with Myles Garrett against us versus Jared Verse against us? And I don't see all that much of a difference, as far as, I'm not seeing this go from, well, they're going to pressure Purdy 5 times and now they're going to pressure Purdy 15 times. I'm not seeing that in one game. And it's really going to come down to, probably, if you're looking at the 49ers' best path to a Super Bowl this year, it's probably going to go through the Rams. I think the Seahawks have taken a step back. And so if you're looking at who do they need to get past to get to the Super Bowl, it's going to be the Rams. So in that matchup, I say, yes, this is a good move for the Rams. This is not as scary a move for the 49ers, if you're really thinking about us. Like, people have been saying they need to go out and they need to go get Max Crosby and make that happen. And sorry, I'm getting distracted because I'm trying to do something, in Restream here has changed my interface. But like, they don't need to go out and get a Max Crosby. I don't think you need to go throw away several first round picks and all of that to go get Max Crosby. The Raiders don't want to deal with the 49ers. That's been a long-standing thing. Al Davis doesn't want to deal with us. Max Crosby doesn't want to leave at Las Vegas. Like, he made that clear during the process with the Ravens. Like, he was not interested in like, he made it clear at the end of that process that he was there in Las Vegas and he was going to be happy to be there, and he wanted to move forward, especially after seeing, I think, what they did in the draft and the prospects for the team. I think if you make a reactionary trade for try and get Max Crosby right now, it just doesn't make sense to me, with how the team has constructed itself and how they're looking at things down the future. You just invested your 3rd pick in this draft in a pass rush specialist in Romello Height. You have a philosophy and approach that you believe works, and history has shown does work for your team, to have this kind of strategy. And we're already talking about throwing that away. If you believe in Romello Height and you believe in what he can bring as a pass rush specialist, why are you're essentially almost trying to throw away his career by doing that if you go get a Max Crosby. So now you've wasted that 3rd round pick. It just, the whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But Thank you so much for the super chat, Junior Madrano, or JR Madrano. Not sure which one it's going to be, but he says, "Can you explain how the Niners rollover cap space plan opens a Super Bowl window? Can they make a splash move like Garrett somewhere down the line?" They can, and I'll get a little bit more into this when I talk about the Brandon Aiyuk news this week, because there is some confusion on what is going on with Brandon Aiyuk and his contract and why they haven't released him. It comes down to they don't have an incentive to release him by the cap numbers, but the 49ers have a lot of cap space right now, over almost 72 million. Now, I think they have some of that war chest in case they do trade Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think, or if they have to release him, if he shows up and they have to release him, they have that ready, because Brandon Aiyuk, if they want to just eat a lot of it, that's going to take a good chunk of this year. Now, it will free up cap monies down the road, but they have to eat a little bit more this year, and they want to roll over a lot of cap space. They want to roll over a good bit of money, because going forward, they have some contracts that are starting to really climb in the cap numbers. Now, um, their cap space right now says that they are 34 million over the cap for 2027. Now, that's also, I don't think that's going to be a number that actually happens. There's two reasons for that. One, that is including Brandon Ayuk with over $27 million in base salary, and that's including Nick Bosa with over $32 million in base salary and another $20 million in bonuses that are there. So Nick Bosa is a $54 million cap figure. Brandon Ayuk is a $40 million cap figure. Those two guys will not be playing on those contracts next year. So if you're looking at rollover, they're going to immediately, just with the Brandon Ayuk situation, there's going to be $27 million freed up for next season. So they're really $7 million over the cap, and then you easily clear that, and they have 71 million in rollover. So essentially the 49ers have next season $64 million in workable cap space if they don't change really much of anything going forward. So with that, they have a lot of flexibility to, one, if you need to start extending some of your own guys, you really want to give like a Colt McKivitz a pay raise in there. You want to lock him up longer. You really like the idea of trying to, Mike Evans has a big deal. You want to give him a pay raise to keep him around and keep him happy next season. I understand he's going to be then even another year older, but you want to keep him around. You can do that. You can go make a splash in free agency. Dre Greenlaw, if he has a really great year and you want to keep him around for another couple seasons, you have the flexibility to do that. You can then start supplementing what you have on the team going forward. So with that, they're in a very good spot for where their cap is going forward with the rollover. That $72 million. Again, people are kind of saying, well, the 49ers are just dwindling in cap space and they're really running out of cap space going forward. I don't really see that when I look at everything. I look at contracts that, as time goes and some of these players start looking at the twilight of their careers, like a Trent Williams, teams start doing what they do is that they'll kick the can down the road and they'll spread out money over a lot of years, a lot of void years tacked on at the end. And then as they start winding down their contracts, what they do is that they start working out, higher base salaries, very low bonuses, if no bonuses, and they start coming to a more tenable agreement of absorbing that cap near the end, so that you can have a soft landing on these guys' caps, so that you're not sitting here at the end of their tenure with a $90 million cap figure or a $55 million cap figure. They work these out as long as you can, that this player is going to be on your team for a long time, like a Nick Bosa. Or right now, it'd be more a Fred Warner. You can adjust Fred Warner's contract in 2028, where he's 30, $30 million or $32 million cap figure, you can bring that down and start creating a soft landing with his contract so that then by the end, it really doesn't hurt you as much. Trent Williams will be a big void bomb hit there, but not as much as it seems because, like, just with it, Trent Williams, if he decides he wants to play past this year, he's got an $11.5 million roster bonus that kicks in when when that time of his career comes. So they can, if he wants to keep playing, there's $11.5 million that will kick in as a bonus that then locks him in with guaranteed money that then forces them to the contract table if he wants to play in 2028. I don't think he will with what he said, but you clear that off if he doesn't do that. So he's now, you're $5 million over the cap. Brandon Aiyuk is $29 million that year. Suddenly now you're $24 million in the green for that cap year. And it looks completely different from what some of the things people are saying about, well, the 49ers cap space is really coming down and down and down. So in all of that, what you start looking at with the Rams, and the Rams start looking like, well, they have this cap space that's increasing over years, and it's really not necessarily true. Um, the Rams did what they did as part of a cap management system. And that sounds crazy going and getting Myles Garrett, and you have Jared Verse under contract. Jared Verse, by the time they have to pay him, he's going to want probably $55 million a year. And he's going to want a lot of that money up front. That's a lot of cash to pay out. Myles Garrett, where he's at in his contract, it's going to be more of the, 3-year, a little bit more even, more void years added on the back end to soften the landing and all that. But Myles Garrett will probably be actually more affordable going forward than Jared Verse because Jared Verse is going to get that first big generational wealth payday, and Jared Verse is going to want a Will McDonald contract where Will McDonald just got $50 million a year. And by the time he's doing this, I just see the defensive end market going at $55 million a year. So when you look at the Rams, they've got 2 corners that they just acquired and are going to be a big time cap figure going forward. After this season, they have low cap figures this season. After this season, they're going to be 55 million plus a year for the next 3 years for their corners. And you got Kyron Williams is going to want a bigger contract going forward. What do they do with Byron Young? Byron Young is probably going to be around a $20 million a year contract. So he's got to get an extension. Puka Nacua is going to be $47 million a year. They've got to work that out. Matt Stafford, and then I think that really happened is that Matt Stafford wants to play for 2 years. Once they drafted Ty Simpson, he was like, "Oh, you're just going to kick me out the door after this year? What if I want to play for 2 more years?" And I think this was a lot of McVay and Stafford saying, "No, we want 2 years with Stafford." And so suddenly they had to pivot and figure out how they were going to deal with Jared Verse needing an extension, Puka Nacua needing an extension, and then planning all these things with the corners for their team to be playing with a rookie contract quarterback. You look at their offensive line, they only have 1 guy signed for past this season on their starting offensive line. So there's a lot of money. They look like they're in a good space as cap wise, but those numbers are going to shrink dramatically very, very quickly and add up really, really quickly. So I don't see this as that they've just, become a team that can pay everybody. And so Symmetry is saying, did I see Fowler's tweet this week saying the Rams aren't going to pay their young players? That has a lot to do with it. Is that when they look like they have this massive amount of cap space and war chest, but that's going to be eaten away extremely quickly when you look at all the guys that they're going to have to pay, that there's going to be a lot of players that hit the free agent market from the Rams. It just is going to be that way. When you start shelling out first round picks, second round picks, third round picks, this is why they end up running into that situation, and they have to do a team reset. It becomes inevitable. It becomes inevitable with almost any team. We had to do it, but we were able to do it in one season. People forget, like people have said, what do the 49ers need to do to keep up or overtake the Rams? And right now, and I get it, it's preseason. Everybody's saying, well, the 49ers are just a notch below everybody. They're just a notch below everybody. They're just not there. And I go, okay, well, one, there's some well, I'll get to that, Cayman. I gotta why it's not letting me. Maybe if I do this. Okay, there it is. I figured out how to tag comments so I can come back to them. Now I lost my train. Oh, so where they say the 49ers aren't going to be able to keep up. I go, yeah, there's two things in here. One, the Rams were picking higher than the 49ers have when you look at combined the last 2 years. The Seahawks were picking higher than the 49ers were the last 2 years when they were in their kind of reset years. And the 2025 Seahawks were not the 2025 Seahawks in 2023 and 2024. The 2025 Rams were not the 2025 Rams in 23 and 24. When you look at those 2 years, those teams were not the same as and everybody says, well, they have all these budding young stars and they have all this homegrown talent. You go, yeah, but that homegrown talent was not as good, nearly as good as we think it was until this year. Like there was a lot of surprising talent from these teams and guys taking further steps, guys that were continuing to grow as players. When you look at the 49ers, they are young and they're unproven, much like the Seahawks were in 2023 and 2024, much like the Rams were in 2023 and 2024. When you look at what was the Rams' record in 2023, they were 10-7. That's why they had the 19th overall pick that they picked Jared Verse with in the 2024 draft. That year, 2024, the Rams were 10-7. They didn't get any better record-wise from one year to the next. When you look at what was Puka Nakua's performance in 2024, he had less than 1,000 yards receiving. He was not. Him and Juwan Jennings had almost the exact same amount of receiving yards in 2024. The difference was Puka Nacua, had more upside in there, but suddenly Puka Nacua comes into 2025 and he has over 1,700 yards. We're not asking Ricky Pearsall to be 2025 Puka Nacua. I'm not asking that. I'm saying, can you be an ascending player? If Ricky Pearsall's healthy, what is his production this year? Is it 700 yards? Is it 800 yards? Is it 900 yards? I would comfortably say Ricky Pearsall's an 800-yard receiver right now. That's not putting him anywhere close to the top end of anything, but that's when you see the games he had when he was healthy, that's what he looks like. The challenge for Ricky is, and you look at, if you take the same trajectory as Jackson Smith and Jigba, Puka Nacua, and you put that on Ricky Pearsall's a 1,500, 1,600-yard receiver next year. I know that sounds crazy to so many people because we just haven't seen it on the field. That's the question is, can he be on the field? And I'm not talking about talent. We haven't seen the talent on the field. We just haven't seen him be able to be on the field long enough. But people already saying, well, he's not that. He might not be. He might be. We don't know because this is a young team and you just don't know with young ascending players. And so that is a trajectory. When you look at what did the Rams do from 2024 to 2025, they went and signed Davante Adams. Davante Adams, when they signed him, is 2 years younger, 2 months younger than Mike Evans. Yet, and Davante Adams is not coming off a great season. So there becomes this thing where Davante Adams becomes like this all-world player that Mike Evans suddenly is not. And I go, and because Mike Evans is old and Davante Adams, but he was still very productive last year. Okay, Mike Evans is his resume is better than Davante Adams' resume. When you have 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons and you are unguardable in the red zone, Mike Evans is a first ballot Hall of Fame player. Davante Adams, I'm not certain is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think he is. And so you look at this and go, okay, well, that was a huge move for the Rams. That opened up so much for Puka Nacua. And I say, well, that same thing can happen there with Ricky Pearsall. There's nothing there that tells me that Ricky can't, because he doesn't have talent, can't be that kind of ascending player. You could Jackson Smith and Jigba. His first year, he had 650 yards receiving, and then he had 1,100 yards receiving, and then he has almost 1,800 yards receiving, because these young players have to be on a trajectory. For the 49ers, they're young, and everybody says, well, they don't have these stars. You look at the young stars for the Rams and the Seahawks, a lot of these guys came into their own in their third and fourth and fifth years in the league. It wasn't their first and second years. There has been some guys who've been big splashes, like a Nick Eamon-Worry. But if you look at like Byron Murphy, his rookie year, he didn't even start more than I think it was 9 games, I think is what he started in. I have it on my notes here. Byron Murphy started 9 games and he had a half a sack in 2024. In 2025, he starts 17 games and he has 7 sacks from a defensive tackle. That is a huge difference. Huge difference. And so I look at that and I say, what is keeping some of our young guys from having that kind of a trajectory? We've seen it on these other teams. That's what the 49ers need. They don't need to go out and make a reactionary trade. They don't need to go out and say, well, we are just worse than these teams. No, you say we've got a young group of guys and they may not be stars right now, but where are they going to be at in November? And so you look at Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker had barely over 500 yards rushing in 2024. In 2025, he has over 1,000 yards rushing. Zach Charbonnet had like 528 yards, I think, somewhere around there, in 2024. Then he has 750 rushing yards in 2025. I again ask, why can't the 49ers have that kind of a boost from some of their young guys? Why can't a Jordan James come in and do that? I get it. They don't want to play other running backs, and they're going to have to. They're just going to have to. But I'd say, why can't Jordan James take an ascending step? Why can't Kalen Black come in and be an explosive guy that can produce well for the team? When I look at who else did I have on here? You had Kobe Bryant, the safety for the Seahawks. He was drafted as a corner, didn't get much playing time. They moved him to safety. He got even less playing time. Then in 2024, he started 11 games. And then 2025, he starts 17 games and he has 4 picks. And he's one of the better safeties in the league. So that's another thing I go, okay, why is it that we believe that the Seahawks have these great young safeties that are a big part of their defense, but we can't say that about Malik Mustafa? Like, why can't Malik Mustafa take a career trajectory like a Kobe Bryant? Like, I don't see a physical deficiency there. I don't see it as he just doesn't have the physical tools. It's going to be other things. Like, all of these things come around. I look at the 49ers and I say, we believe that the Seahawks and Rams have been the 2025 Seahawks and Rams for the last 3 years. These teams had not won more than 10 games, either of them, in the up until 2025, from 2023 to 2024. 2023, the Seahawks were 9-8. 2024, they were 10-7. Rams were 10-7 and 10-7. So when I look at where the 49ers are at with their cap reset as to where they were, where the Seahawks were with their cap reset, the 49ers had a much better year last year than either of those teams are doing during their reset years. And so why can't the 49ers take a bigger step than those teams did those years? Like, those guys were not household names coming into that. Now they are. And everybody says, well, we can't keep up with them. We're just not on the same level. Why? Like, why not? Why not us? Why not our team? We have a lot of young guys that have a lot of potential, but they've got to realize their potential. And so that's how I see it. That's how I see things going forward. I'll thank you so much for the super chat, Cayman's Island. Great friend of the show. Great friend. I will say, go subscribe to his podcast. He's got a lot of great stuff there. Just click on his icon. It's there. It'll take you right to his YouTube page, and subscribe. Give him a like. Give him a help out. He says, am I wrong that next year Brock can restructure to help the cap? Would it be good to have that worked out, and then we can be more aggressive? They can, I'm not sure they will. There's not a lot of room to gain there with Brock in 2027. Brock's cap numbers are not big right now. So his cap in 2026 is bigger than 2027, and he's 47 million this year. Next year, he's 23. I was looking at the wrong ones. I was looking at the guaranteed salaries. This year he's 23.7 mil as a cap figure. Next year he's 30.1, so it's still not horribly untenable. Then it jumps up over the next 2 seasons in 2028 and 2029. In 2028 he's a 56.9 mil cap figure, which again by 2028 might not be that untenable. It might be they want to keep it under 13%. That's the target line for a quarterback. Then in 2029, it's a $71.8 million cap figure because of the void years and the roster bonuses, and then there's option bonuses in there, and then with the base salary. They're going to rework that in 2028. You know, the way the 49ers tend to work their contracts, they always give themselves an out after 3 years with everybody. This happens with Nick Bosa. This happens with Fred Warner. Like that second contract, they always give themselves an out, and that is the out trigger for them with Brock in 2028. Like if they decided in 2028, like there's something that's happened, is an injury, or he just completely falls apart. I don't see that happening. Then they can pull the ripcord and they save $42 million against the cap. So they get huge savings there. Like they can have an out when it balloons, but if they keep him going forward, 2028 is the target line for a restructure with Brock. So I think Bosa is your better target for a restructure if you're going to go forward in 2027 and try and get more aggressive. Fred Warner becomes a target. Those are guys that make a little bit more sense. Even a Ricky Pearsall, because you can lower his cap number in 2027 if you give him an extension and if he balls out this year. So that's one thing, and they could do that to try and go and get ahead of it. And so Mr. G, he answers the question. He says, "What's holding our young players back? Health. Getting healthy and our improved coaching staff helps a lot. Why not now?" And that's what I'm saying. Why not now? It comes down to health. When you look at the 49ers, why did they get so blown out at the end of the year by the Seahawks? Well, at the end of the year, you have Spencer Burford and Austin Pleasance as your left side of your offensive line. And Ricky Pearsall, every time he falls down on his knee, is out for the rest of the game. And George Kittle's dealing with torn ligaments in his ankle. And that becomes a problem going forward. It just does. And that becomes the thing. I mean, we often forget things went so wildly wrong so quickly for the 49ers in that divisional round against the Seahawks. I mean, the Seahawks were coming off a bye week. They didn't have to travel. The 49ers had to go out to Philly, come back, then go up to Seattle on the road. Really tough thing to do. You get an opening kickoff return for a touchdown. You turn the ball over on downs the next drive, and then Jake Ton just fumbles the ball when you're moving it. And you blink, and you're down 21-0. And so, in a defense that was just running on fumes by that point. I mean, when you look at the week 18 game against the Seahawks, I go, okay, who did the 49ers have out there? And who do they have at defensive end? You had Bryce Huff, who was a specialist pass rusher, trying to stand in there against multiple tight ends in the run game, and we couldn't stop the run. And you had Garrett Wallow, was one of your better linebackers playing during that time. Garrett Wallow, okay? I don't think anybody's looking at this and saying, yeah, that equals Ernest Jones for the Seahawks. Like, no. They've got to get healthy. They've got to be healthy, and then their young players take a next step, and it becomes, what it is. I will say I've seen this with Aaron Donald coming back to the Rams. I'm not sold. Like, Aaron Donald is a phenom. He's a freak. He's also 35 years old, and he hasn't played football in 4 years. So, I'm not sold that a guy who hasn't played football in 4 years, is 35, is gonna come back and be this unblockable phenom and a guy that just can dominate, come right in and dominate for 5 months. I don't see it. I I get everything that's happening. That Aaron Donald now is not the Aaron Donald that was there in 2021. Um, he's just not. So, uh, I don't see that happening. But, um, yeah, anyways, I say, why not the 49ers now? And I get it. It's the offseason. Nobody's proven anything yet. But that's what we have to remember. The Seahawks lost several really key pieces this year. They lost Mafe, which was a big part of their pass rush. They lost Kenneth Walker, who was their primary run producer. They're facing now big expectations, and all guys that they're going to all want to be paid. They're in contract years. They lost Tariq Woolen. Um, they've got to prove that they can continue to draft really well. They lost their offensive coordinator. They went and stole another one of ours. Not happy about that. But they've got to prove that they can do this as it goes forward and be consistent, and that they can continue to draft really well. The 49ers had in 2019 had a phenomenal draft, and we lived off that for a little while. 2020 was okay. 2021 was actually pretty good outside the Trey Lance debacle. The problem was the Trey Lance debacle set us back in 2022 and 2023. But they grabbed some really good players in 2021. In 2022, then it was terrible. 2023, it was terrible. And now we're in the unknowns. But it doesn't take many years of you being terrible to really sink your team, especially when you don't have the ammo to let guys go and then restock the cupboard. So, I just come back to, you look at the 2023 49ers when you had Javon Hargrave, who was coming off of a big season in Philadelphia, and you had Nick Bosa, who was defensive player of the year that year. We forget Nick Bosa was defensive player of the year. You had Chase Young. Um, you had Fred. You had Dre. Um, you had Tayshaun Gibson, who was coming off of who had 4 picks that year, coming off 4 picks a year. I'm trying to remember. Who was playing really well. You had an all-pro corner in Mooney Ward. You had Diamador Lenore, who was playing really well. You had a really good defense, phenomenal defense. You still had Eric Armstead there. And then on offense, I mean, they had weapons everywhere. Debo was all pro. You had Brandon Aiyuk that year, 1,400 yards, second team all pro. You had George Kittle as an all pro. You had Christian McCaffrey as an all pro. You have Trent Williams as an all pro. Brock Purdy was playing near an MVP level during that whole time. Like, you look at that 2023 49ers team, and Rams fans are sitting there like, oh, this Rams team is so much better than that 2023 49ers team. I go, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. Like, that 2023 49ers team was absolutely stacked. Absolutely stacked. That's what hurt so bad about losing that Super Bowl, is that was a team that was just a notch above everybody in the NFL. I will take 2023 Debo over what will be a 34-year-old Devontae Adams this year. Because of what Debo could do with the ball in his hands. You just had to get the ball in his hands, and dude was going to get 1,200 yards on the year. Like, he didn't have to win a lot of routes. Brandon Aiyuk was cooking almost everybody, 17 yards a catch. George Kittle, I will take over anybody that the Rams have on their at their tight end. I will take Trent Williams over anybody that the Rams have on their offensive line. I will take Christian McCaffrey in 2023 Offensive Player of the Year over Kyron Williams in a heartbeat. And I will look at our linebacker core, our safety core, and I will put that against anything that the Rams have as their linebackers and safeties in this season. And I look at the defensive line and I say, like Myles Garrett, 2026 Myles Garrett, 2023 Nick Bosa. That's pretty close. That's pretty close. It's not as wide. I mean, I'm not saying Nick Bosa's Myles Garrett, but that's closer than Rams fans want to admit. And then you look at Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, and Chase. Anyways, uh, I haven't had enough coffee to say this morning, but you look at that defensive line and I say, equal out. The defensive tackles are going to be more productive than what the Rams have. So, like, this 2026 Rams team is not invincible. The 2023 49ers weren't. So everybody's saying just forfeit the year and it's gone. No, you got to play the games. We got to play the games and see how it goes. With that, we'll move on to the next major topic, which is Brandon Aiyuk had an arrest warrant issued for him this week. It's kind of one of those things of play stupid games, win stupid prizes. When you film yourself going down the highway at over 108 miles an hour and your speedometer is visible, it tends to draw some attention of the authorities. And so in the aftermath of his Instagram live of him speeding over 100 miles an hour down the highway, there has been an arrest warrant issued for him. I've seen some people saying, well, this is now why the 49ers just need to release him, get away from the drama. It's going to be in the headlines. Just release him. You're just holding on to him for petty reasons. And I'll say, no, there's been some confusion as far as how the 49ers can move forward with Brandon Aiyuk. And I will tell you, until Brandon Aiyuk shows up at 4949 DeBartolo Way, they are not going to do anything with him because they actually have an incentive not to. So there's the idea that if he's still on the roster come September, he's got an option bonus that's going to kick in, or a roster bonus that's going to kick in, and that they have to get rid of him before that point. That's the inflection point, that if they don't do anything by that point, then they have to keep him. He's got I think it's $11 million in bonus, or 9.558 million as an option bonus there, that he's due. So they've got to move on from him, eat the dead cap. Nobody's going to trade for him. Well, so there's some confusion over how the did not report designation works under the CBA. People are acting like the did not report list is kind of like putting somebody on the reserve or retired list, and it's not, or that it's similar to releasing him, and it's not. So if Brandon Aiyuk they've tried to get in contact with him, and they've already done it this year when they tried to work out a trade, he did not respond. So the 49ers do not have to make a good faith like reaching out to him. All they have to do is notify his agent when the mandatory report date for training camp is. If he doesn't show up at that point, if literally they say 8 a.m. on the 27th is mandatory report. If at 8:01 he is not there, they can designate him at that point as did not report. And it won't have a big effect at that point, but as time goes, what did not report does is it gives teams an out for the exact situation that they are in. It's different than a holdout. Holdouts, you still have to, like a holdout. If somebody's in a holdout, like Le'Veon Bell, and this is part of why this came in. Le'Veon Bell is in a holdout. He doesn't want to play under the franchise tag. That money, that base salary, still counted against the Steelers' cap. Now, they fined him as a team for a game check for every week he was missing. So they didn't have to pay out the cash, but that still cost them base salary against the salary cap. So, like, that's how a holdout issue works. But when you have a situation where, and the only way the 49ers could recoup salary cap space if that happened was they would have to work under the Barry Sanders rule, which is then they would have to sue Brandon Aiyuk for some of his signing bonus to get back what they can, and then it would be credited to them against his prorated signing bonus. He's in a situation where he's not holding out for a new contract. He's in a situation where he is not reporting to a team that he is under contract with. That's why he lost his guarantees. We don't know. There's different rumors. People are saying, well, he's not going to show up until he gets guarantees because he's not going to have his career ruined playing off of a repaired ACL without guarantees. Okay, well, then he's just not going to play. Like at this point, you didn't follow up on the things you needed to do to make that happen. If he's in a just not showing up, in that instance, the moment he does that, when the training camp kicks in and then the season kicks in, I think what the 49ers are going to do, they have two options here. They could wait through training camp and they could do it at August 31st and tag him as did not report. That would be the petty move. And that would be one that I don't think they want to do because honestly, I think they want to incentivize Brandon Aiyuk to not show up. Because if Brandon Aiyuk is under contract and he doesn't show up for training camp, there are league mandatory fines that start being put in at $50,000 a day. And so when you look at the total of training camp, it'd be around $1.5 million. He would be fined by the league. They are non-waivable. The 49ers cannot waive those. Those are league required. It's paid to the NFL league, not paid to the team. So if he's on the active roster and he doesn't report for training camp, he starts getting fined. So they could, if they were really wanting to force the issue, put him on the active roster that's there, designate him active roster, and then he gets fined by the league irrevocably at $1.5 million about by the end of training camp. The idea would then he would have to show up for them, much like that's what happened during the year last year. Is he was getting fined and it was like the league is finding you. We can't waive these. So then he showed up and he was like walking through and he was at some of the preseason stuff. That's option one. And then at the end, they release him. They deal with the dead cap. Option two. Now they could also say he shows up now. We have to release him because he doesn't want to be here. We don't want him here. That's a whole situation. So they could use training camp to force him to show up and see if they can get a trade done. I don't think that's in their best interest right now. I don't. Because if he just continues to not show up, they tag him as did not report. Once somebody did not report, every week that goes by the regular season that they are not there, their entire cap for the proration of that week is wiped out, including prorated signing bonuses. So right now he's got prorated bonuses over the season, through everything, and there's no escalation of his prorated bonuses in 2026 and 2027. So the moment they can put him on did not report, they would almost instantly clear about $7 million, $7.5 million in salary cap space. And then every week they would get back about $150,000 to $180,000 in cap space. So what would end up happening is under did not report by the end of 2027, if he doesn't show up, the 49ers get back by the end of that $13 million in cap space. And so they clear all of that. And so they would end up actually at the end of the year right now with $84 million in cap space. And then when 2027 comes around, it's the same thing. And it wipes out that year of his contract. So he just did not report. You get all the cap space back. It's as if that year of his contract didn't exist because the guy never reported. And so then in 2027, you did not report again, and you don't get any of the acceleration of dead cap. It will remove all of his cap space as you go, and you get all of it back. And so that would clear them around $40 million in cap space that year. And then the same thing in 2028, the last year of his contract, and it would clear them over $42 million in cap space. If Brandon Aiyuk just is done with football and he doesn't want to officially retire, then all that happens. If he officially retires, what ends up happening is that's still good for the 49ers and he has to file the paperwork to do that because they retain his contract rights. So he can't retire and then unretire and go to the Commanders. He would have to be traded. It would wipe out all of his option bonuses, wipe out all of his base salary, and it would just keep the same timeline of a lot of his prorated bonus because he retired. So the best options for the 49ers right now is to do nothing with him. Make Brandon Aiyuk choose, what are you going to do with your future? We are not doing you any favors. And if you show up, we'll cut you. So Brandon Aiyuk knows that's what's going to happen. Unless he really wants to play football somewhere else, He's not going to do that. And he also knows that showing up is going to give the 49ers leverage. And he doesn't want to do that, apparently. So if he does that, like there's been a misconception here that the 49ers just need to cut him now. And I say, no, hold on to him. If he doesn't show up, did not report him, like put him on the did not report list, and you get the maximum savings from him on that list. So you are in your best scenario right now to clear out of this situation is literally just to do nothing and let him continue to not show up. And you will be working out better than any other situation. So that's something I wanted to clear up about the Brandon Aiyuk situation, that people are like, well, 49ers are just being petty. No, they're not. They're following the best rules, because the did not report designation in the CBA is a small little subsection buried deep in the CBA that really never comes up, because this never happens where a player just stops calling. They stop returning calls. They won't show up anymore. Like, this is pretty unprecedented. People saying there's going to be a Brandon Aiyuk rule in future negotiations. There's really not, because this is already addressed through that, and it had to do with Barry Sanders and Le'Veon Bell, who both kind of left their teams unexpectedly. And so, like, that was why these things why these things are the way they are. And it's built in that if somebody ever did something like what Brandon Aiyuk does, that it doesn't punish a team for that. So that a guy just loses his mind, goes crazy, and is gone. That's the best pathway forward for the 49ers. In everything, I think the 49ers are set up really good for the next 3 years, and their Super Bowl window is wide open. People saying it's closed. No, it's not. That I would have to see to believe, because as long as you have a franchise quarterback like Brock Purdy, a head coach like Kyle Shanahan, and you keep investing in your defense, your Super Bowl window is always open. It's always open. We saw that last year. The 49ers, were making believers of a lot of people by week 17 last year. And then week 18 happened and kind of changed some ideas, but people were like becoming believers when the 49ers were rolling through December. They were looking really good. And you start going, well, maybe, and you might get Fred Warner back. When you have a pairing like that, your Super Bowl window is always open. The 49ers should be better this year in every way than they were last year. People say the aging stars. I say the aging stars, two of them missed the entire season pretty much. So and Brock Purdy missed half the season, and you didn't have any extra wide receiver. Like, your best wide receiver was Juwan Jennings, who just got signed like 2 weeks ago. The 49ers should be better in every way, and they were 12-5, and like, there's no reason to say why are the 49ers not a top 4 team in the NFC? And once you're in the top 4, you got to go play the games. Like, you can be crowned the best team in the league, but you got to go prove it on the field. So anyways, I appreciate you hanging out with me for this Friday. We're going to get back to some more film on Monday. I got the Ephesians prize talk. I've gotten through his film. I need to organize all the clips and show what that is. I'm working on Ashton Davis. The 49ers, that's the other thing. They signed Ashton Davis this week. So I don't know what to think about that right now. I don't like just looking at a lot of stats with safeties, because it doesn't tell much of a story. So I'm looking at his film. I've gotten through a couple games already. Want to see more there of what's going on and what they got there with Ashton Davis. But thank you for joining me. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, go Niners.